Welcome to the Best Music Podcast. My name is Dan the Music Man, and this week's featured guest is Bobby Messano. Bobby Messano is a legendary guitarist and contemporary blues songwriter who has released 8 solo CDs, placed songs on many TV and cable shows, and played over 50 major label appearances on albums and indie albums as well, including projects with Gloria Gaynor, Peter Criss, co-founder of Kiss, Lynn Turner, Fiona, Clarence Clemmons, Franke The Knockouts, and STARZ, that's S-T-A-R-Z. His recordings have earned 34 First Round Grammy Ballots in 11 categories, along with airplay in more than 275 blues stations. That's Why I Don't Sing the Blues was on the American blues scene's top 5 chart for 24 weeks and was named 2012's top blues rock album in the USA by Blues Underground Network. Love and Money, the album released in 2015, hit number 1 on the Billboard Blues Album chart and was nominated for a Blues Blast Award for Best Rock Blues Album. His 2017 album, Bad Movie, debuted at number 1 on SiriusXM's Bluesville channel, remaining in the rack of Top Blues 15 for 3 months and won in the Best Blues category for the Hollywood Music in Media Awards. Get this, between 2012 and 2016, Bobby played over 400 shows in 32 states to over 500,000 people. His new album, The Songs I Never Sang, is available now on streaming services, apps, and platforms. His website, bobbymessano.com, Facebook, bobby.messano.fanpage, Twitter, @BobbyMessano. Bobby, thanks so much for taking the time to come hang out today.
Hey, I have to figure out where to put my hand. Hi. How you doing, Dan?
You know, I'm doing so good. It is such a pleasure and an honor to talk with you. I actually remembered about 3 days ago how I first saw you play, which was the harp player, Chuck Bravo.
Chuck, oh my God.
And for listeners who don't understand harp, when we're talking in the blues, harp means harmonica player. So the harmonica player or harp player, Chuck Bravo, who was doing all this stuff with Peter Wolf, actually invited me to come watch him sit in with you at some North Jersey gig, probably about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And that is how I first saw you. And of course, I walked in the door and you just blew my mind with the level of professionalism, musicality, and it just was taking the idea of a bar blues band to the stars. Definitely sort of arena quality playing and tight from a music perspective, and just really, really excellent. So that's how I first found out about you. Fun story.
Wow. Chuck, my goodness. I flew Chuck down to to North Carolina, to Charlotte with me. I can't remember when it was, or maybe, I don't know. I want to say 2007, 2008. And we opened for the Fabulous Thunderbirds at this big festival, and actually blew them off the stage, which was really fun. Oh my God, this is so good. It's early in the morning for me, but this is cool. So
excellent. Well, thanks for getting up, and thanks for making this happen.
Oh, absolutely.
So we'll start off with a couple warm-up questions.
Okay.
So do you have a favorite song or a favorite piece of music at the moment?
Of my own or somebody else's?
Either.
Wow. It's really strange because I've sort of, with the pandemic, I'm not listening to a lot of stuff. And you will see how opinionated I am during this interview, but the bar is so low right now. It's very disappointing for me. I don't know. That's a really difficult question because I've been asked that before, and I'm not sure.
Well, is there something you heard in the past 2 days, let's say, that stood out to you as something that you sort of went, that's interesting?
Actually, I was sick for the last 2 days.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's strange because if I go back to my records, I'm really proud of a lot of their stuff. And plus, what's going on is I'm sort of in writing mode right now. And when I go into writing mode, I try not to listen to anything because I want a blank slate. I want a clean piece of paper to start thinking of things to write. But I've got so many favorites, but you want to know, it's interesting. As listening to the new record, new record, the new download, which is the first time I've done an entire project of cover tunes. I've never done that before. I know a lot of artists do it, and when I was talking to my manager and some other people about it, they were like, "Oh yeah, people do that all the time." I've been listening to that, just trying to get a feel if I actually like it or not. And Back in the High Life, which is a Steve Winwood song, I'm actually really digging. So if it's anything that I've listened to in the last week, it's probably that cover on my new CD, the songs I never sang. So, but I've got a million songs. I mean, my God, if we went through this, Earth, Wind, and Fire's I could go through the entire thing, or, there's all sorts of stuff I love. So, yeah, that right now, that's because I'm getting used to it. And I'm listening to my own stuff, which is something I don't do too often. So
whereas some people might actually like to listen to an artist, an album, or a genre of music for inspiration for writing, you prefer coming to writing with a clean slate. So having no preconceived notions going in is a hard thing to say because you've had a lifetime of doing music. Right. So you're going to have ideas kicking around in there that are going to come out, but you're not trying to angle the writing in a specific direction. Never. You're trying to allow whatever's coming out to come out.
Yeah. And, and this record, it's a strange thing because, I'm categorized as a blues artist, right? But I'm just a guitar player, singer, songwriter, and that's a long story, which we could talk about, but I just play whatever happens. And I'm more of and I'm a blues rock artist, but, all of the foundations for where I've ended up at this point in my life, which is really old, is, they're already there. So, if I sit down and write an acoustic song, I might be thinking, this is going to be a James Taylor-ish song, or this might be a Eric Clapton-ish song, or this might be a Led Zeppelin-ish song. So it's all there. But I like not listening to anything because it's, that truly can put you into a preconceived state, I think. And I've been with artists that have done that going into their records. They'll just listen to all the stuff and they'll be frantically going, oh, I want to sound like, and it doesn't always work. So it's really nice to just have nothing to think about and then just go in and start writing, And again, I'm not sure why I'm writing right now because I don't know if I'm going to do another record or not. I'd like to, but considering the state of the business these days, who knows?
So let's touch on what you said a little earlier, which was even though you are called a blues artist or a blues rock or rock blues artist, on your records, there is a strong pop sensibility, and sometimes you actually completely throw the blues out the window, especially on a lot of your ballads, and really go straight sort of pop, like you were saying, a James Taylor type thing, an Eric Clapton type thing. What inspires you to bring those pop influences into blues records?
Wow, that's a really good call. No one has ever asked that before. And it's really interesting because I have, when you were doing the intro, you missed Lemonade. That was the last album that's on Warner Brothers. And in getting to your point to, an interviewer when Bad Movie was coming out, who I knew, and I had done interviews with before, the first thing he said to me was, "You're a songwriter. What happened to songwriters in the blues genre?" And this goes to sort of that. I grew up, on the Four Seasons and Philly soul music and the Beatles and the Dave Clark Five and, the Yardbirds, all that 60s stuff. And that was all, pop music. And even though maybe it's, certainly now pop music, I don't know what the hell it is. And I'm not being Mr. Old Guy. I'm just being honest, when you could sit in a kitchen and put a bunch of samples and then have someone that can't sing, pro tooling their way into a vocal that has a 3-note range, and then have 15 other songwriters come in on the song, and the only words on it are I. That's not pop music, Pop music is the real stuff.
On that point, Bobby,
yeah.
here's a sort of quasi-philosophical question for you.
Shoot.
By definition, pop music needs to be popular.
True.
Therefore, if a song has someone who's pro tooling their ways through melodyning, auto tuning their way through singing, it has 15 writers on it, but the song is popular,
then it's pop music.
Then it is in fact pop music.
Correct. So, I mean, I agree with that completely. It doesn't. It's the sign of whatever. And look, I am a techie. And I mean, I've been on. I mean, I'm not just saying that to be some cool guy. I've been on bulletin boards and the internet since 1987. I was one of the original members of America Online when I could still email Steve Case, and he would ask me suggestions.
Wow.
But I go back. I mean, I had a whole setup, when I was doing all my writing in the 80s, I had a setup with samplers, and it was a 4-track with an FSK tone. And, and I was writing, songs that were going to Hart and Robert Plant. And it was like real old school floppy disks, And when I got on the bulletin board, which was called, what was it called? It was called Q-Link. That was Steve Case. And it ended up turning into AOL. And I was one of the first. I mean, my number on AOL was 3,228.
Wow.
So, so I'm okay with technology. I have no problem with technology. In fact, I love it, But the thing is that the pop music thing, as far as it being popular, when I moved to Nashville in 1998, 99, I was stunned by the amount of auto-tune and everything that was going on already back then. And what producers, the industry, radio has done, it's, to me, again, these are all my opinions. As people can hate me, and I couldn't care less. It's sort of force-fed people into thinking that certain things make the song pop. So if you have a song on the radio by whoever it is, and there's no auto-tune on that voice, they don't understand it because they've been forced to say, why does that voice sound like a real voice? It doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't have auto-tune. It doesn't have something. They've made it part of the actual music.
Yeah, I would take it one step further, Bobby, and say that it's also the natural variations in pitch that occur, even in a trained singer.
Yes.
That when you hear that without auto-tune, all of a sudden it's like, wait, something's wrong. They're not a good singer.
Right.
Well, then this is not me saying it. This is from a sort of consumer perspective. Oh, this person who's not auto-tuned might not be a good singer. Whereas you have many pop acts. Like I was just watching this documentary on Blackpink, which is this K-pop Korean band. Again, this is nothing against them. I fully support their music. But they showed them going into the studio, and the ladies would go into the booth. They would get a good take where the emotion was present. So they would emote effectively, but the tuning was not at all there.
Right.
And then post-production, they then take that emoted take and then they tune it up. Right. And so for the uneducated consumer, let's say, that might be the idea of, oh, this is good singing.
Yeah.
Whereas we listen to maybe Pavarotti and like, wait a second, what's going on?
Even listen to Lady Gaga. She can sing.
Yeah, she can.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There are people out there that actually sing. I mean, sing amazing. And that's, see, I mean, and I did an entire record where I had to auto tune like every 4 bars, the singer, and I produce. And I usually will not go into a studio with a singer that can't sing. If somebody says, hey, I want you to produce me, I'll listen to them and I'll listen to their songs. And I've turned people down and said, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. And even if they became a huge star later, I would sit and go, I can't do it. I grew up at a time which is missing, where people had to play, had to sing. It's like there's that whole, guitar hero syndrome, which I think I hear that I'm part of. Maybe I'm not Eddie Van Halen, but I am a guitar hero to some people. But I had to work to play that well, and I really had to work, and I go, it's really interesting, again, because I'm a techie, I go, God, if I was on YouTube when I was 14, I would either be friggin' dead by now or a gazillionaire and retired, because. And this is not an ego thing. It's just because I was working really hard. I sounded like Jimi Hendrix or whoever I sounded like back there. And if somebody had seen that, it would have been like, oh, my God, look at this, But we didn't have those advantages. We had to literally, walk our way into where we were going to be. I mean, when I was a studio musician in New York, I worked my ass off to become a person that could play on almost any record that anybody called me on, because it was that was the work ethic, and if you listen, I know it's sort of passe, but where are guitar solos? They're gone because people don't have the ability. There's a few, but that's about it. Nobody cares,
I don't know if I agree with that, Bobby.
What's that?
I don't know if I agree with that. And here's why. You can hear, like, let's take, for example, the Avicii song, Wake Me Up When It's All Over.
Okay.
I'm not going to sing it, because I don't want to have to pay for copyright. But there is essentially a replacement of a guitar solo. There's instrumental parts where synthesizers.
No, I understand that.
Have essentially replaced what the guitar solo did.
Right. I am not in any disagreement of that. And I was okay with that because I played on a lot of synthesizer-driven things. I did. So that doesn't bother me at all. But the ability to do it and make it a part of pop music has disappeared.
So what you're talking about is the technical ability.
The technical aspect of the player, because, someone that, and you teach, someone that does 3 chords doesn't make them an artist or a player. But that same person that can play 3 chords could become a star because they know those 3 chords.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And to break this down for our listeners, the idea is that the way music has gone with the softwares and the technologies, it's democratized the point of entry for creating music, where someone doesn't need to spend 10, 12, 15 years of their life perfecting their skills on an instrument. They can just click a button, drag and drop samples, and then actually enter in notes on a keyboard within an algorithm that's going to keep them in the scale or in the key.
Absolutely.
Right.
See, and that's just not now. I mean, I was doing like a lot of pop dance records when I was in New York, in the early, in the mid 80s and stuff, when all the dance clubs were really, I mean, they're still happening, but when dance clubs were happening, it wasn't just EDM and, and beats and stuff, but, people would come in or people would hire me and they would want, like the Nile Rodgers Madonna guitar stuff. He and I were the only ones doing that in New York. It was just me and him. And it was really cool because it was not necessarily, that was not Guitar Hero stuff. That was becoming part of the rhythm section and having, it was direct through the board and, it was really cool. And I still do that a lot. But people would call up and I would go in to do a session and they would put their Mac up, even back then, and put their song up. And I would go, what key is it in? And they would go, What's a key? And I would go, you don't know what a key, you don't know what key this is in? And then I'd listen to it and put it together. I said, you have a chord chart? And they would go, what are chords? And this is a long time ago. And they would go, I don't know what chords they are. So I'd write a chord chart out. And I'm not a reader, but I could write chord charts, And then they would ask to do sometimes things that were physically impossible for a human to play. Like a 30-second note pick with a wah-wah doing 16th notes. And I would go, this is impossible. And they would go, but my computer can do it. And I would go, well, absolutely. So have the computer do it. These are the parameters of what a human can do in this position, So it's not a new thing. This is, the old school, funk and the old school dance stuff. They were already starting to do that. So, and again, I certainly am not, I'm not like one of these guys that's against everything like that, because I love a lot of that stuff. But it has really, the parameters of being a musician have changed from working hard to do your craft to being able to sit in your kitchen with GarageBand or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think there's one more part of this story, is that the working hard part now doesn't happen on the instrument. It happens in the networking. It happens in the social media. It happens
Understood.
Yeah.
And again, I've been on social media forever.
Absolutely.
So I understand that. But by the same token, like, if I go to a NAMM show, well, they're not having them now, but, you go to the NAMM shows, and believe me, I am in awe of some of the social media people, but it's so bogged down in the amount of people in it that, they always used to say you have like a little teeny shot to become to become popular or famous, because even though it's more democratized, your chances are even less, because, instead of having 19,000 records released every year that the Grammys see, now you have 50,000 or 100,000 or 200,000 tracks that are going on iTunes that somebody's making at their house. So, I've gone every NAMM I've gone through for the last 5 years, and I have my endorsements. I go see my friends and blah, blah, blah. And then I'll see YouTube sensation, and I'll go over, and maybe it's some kid that plays really great solos and he doesn't know how to play chords and he's fast as Yngwie Malmsteen times 100. But I'll go, have you ever played a live show? And they'll go, no. I just play on YouTube. And I'll go, but okay. And I make lots of money because I'm getting 16 million hits on YouTube. And now look, here I am at NAMM and I'm endorsing X guitar. But I'll go, but what's the long-term plan? Do you ever want to go out and play live and, go play Coachella or, it's and they just have no answers, because the only thing they want is that pinpointed, it's just gotten to that. And it's not, I would love to see it just like go, can I curse on this?
We'll edit it out, but yeah, you
well, no, I won't.
you go ahead.
I would really like to see it go down to ground zero and start off as something that was there like 30, 40 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, like almost a folk scene, and bring the whole thing back up like that with social media. So here you have people, and it's almost, and there are a lot of artists doing that. The singer-songwriters, the acoustic people that are doing very well on social media. So bring that back into the small clubs, take them out of the $1,800 a ticket arenas, and move the whole industry back up from the bottom end of it. And I think it'd be really cool. You're not going to have DJs making $250,000 a minute to play for 50,000 people, and all they're doing is doing DJ stuff, putting it on an iPod. So, I don't know. It's it's a hard thing because I see kids that ask me, what can I do? They can't do anything. You know what I mean? They can do what they're doing and really love making the music, whatever music it is, but where is the outlet to actually be able to make it into a lifelong, a living? Does that make sense?
It does, and it's such a complicated topic, Bobby, because there's no right answer. There's just
absolutely
there's just different perspectives on it. And I mean, even like with the DJs, like I know for a fact, like Deadmau5, he insists on triggering his own samples, which does right, which actually does require some musical work to understand form, to understand structure, beat, rhythm, timing, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But it's when you talk about artists finding a living, could we agree that the 16-year-old kid in his bedroom getting 16 million hits a month on YouTube, he could ostensibly, if he manages his money, he could be set for life?
Absolutely.
So I think maybe the question is, how does not the YouTube star, but how does the artist?
Okay, but let's define artist.
Okay, yeah, sure. So an artist who is a singer-songwriter who insists on doing only new things, never taking a step back, only doing new things. So there's never a continuous brand identity other than the actual artists themselves, because they're always pushing. Like, think about David Bowie.
That's the best branding anyway.
Sure. Well, think about Bowie or Gaga. Just every album is a new character, a reinvention of the sound, a reinvention of the identity, everything.
Yeah.
My question is, how does that person fit? Because once you get locked into from my experience, once you get locked into a certain groove on the social media side of things, that's what people want, that's what they expect. And if you do anything different, you are met with violent resistance.
Right. So, I mean, the artist is actually being pigeonholed by social media.
And by the algorithms of the social media, because the SEO works in such a way that once your channel gets a certain amount of traffic for a certain thing, it's going to be a heck of a lot harder to pivot to something else.
Right. But I'm loving this. I think you're friggin' fantastic.
I think you're awesome
really
too, Bobby.
But yeah, and for an old guy, I'm not too bad at this stuff, Oh
no, you're on the ball.
But the thing is that, that's the true bummer of this, because then you're only the artist that they decide you're going to be. And yes, you can make you know what I mean? It's like you're not allowed to, like you said to me before, even though, I do blues stuff, I end up doing pop stuff. Now, again, I'm not dependent on, look, they make a lot more money than I do, believe me, but the thing is, I'm not dependent on me doing that music to have the algorithm fit what I'm doing to hit that market. So if I do something that's poppy, no one's going to turn against me. They're going to, the small amount of fans I have are going to go, hey, look, Bobby did something poppy. But with the artist now that only is set into that mode, yeah, sure, you can make, a living out of it. But that sort of just doesn't, are you an artist then, or just a tool of what the system is?
I don't know, because we could also look at it from another perspective, which is to say that boundaries or limitations actually can be a breeding ground for creativity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So perhaps we need to rethink the way we think of an artist because of these new constraints. And maybe an artist is someone who can, for a career, for 30, 40, 50 years, evolve and grow within these constraints. And what does that even look like? I don't think we've seen anyone do that yet.
I don't know. And I don't think they'll get 30, 40, 50 years.
You don't?
I think they'll get 3 or 4. because the entire world, especially the United States, is all ADD, and they're only going to concentrate on this little bit here, and that's it. And then, okay, next, So because you have 18,000 other artists then copying what you're doing, then that blows you out of the water and moves you to the next one, I think.
But can't we say the same?
There's no real, it's like, it's not brand loyalty like buying Purina dog chow. It's like loyalty to the whatever that artist created as his particular spot in the food chain of social media. And then the next one is going to push them out of the way. You know what I mean? There's not a huge amount of loyalty.
Well, I do know what you mean, but I think a direct comparison could be drawn to the record industry, because you have certain artists who have the longevity, longevity, that they make a 30, 40-year career out of it.
Yeah, but think of who most of those artists are. They're not from now. We haven't seen that yet.
Well, I think Taylor Swift is making a strong case. I think Ed Sheeran is making a strong case. I think Justin Bieber is making a strong case.
Yeah, but they've also branched out. You know what I mean? They're not just, I saw Taylor. Taylor has worked very hard, but I saw her on her first Grand Ole Opry show, and everybody was in tears, because she really worked to become, who she was. And Ed's great. Ed is just great. But the thing is that still we're let's say 10 years or 12 years there. We're and I'm not saying go back to the old thing, but where are the Led Zeppelins? That's 50 years. You know what I mean? We're not seeing that yet. And that's sort of a bummer, because there have been a lot of artists out in the last 20 years that should have the longevity of a lot of those older acts, and they don't have it. And it's a bummer, because those are the ones you're talking about.
Yeah, but I think part of the equation too is factoring in the diminishing payout of the actual music. So
okay. I lost you for 1 second.
Oh yeah, I was saying that I think part of the picture is also the diminishing payout of music. So now that we move to streaming, so we look at an artist like Rihanna, she was absolutely killing it in the music game. But then she left to start a clothing line, branding, all this other stuff, where she's actually making a lot more money per hour of her time. Rumor is, though, she still makes it into a recording studio every night to practice recording. But I think part of the change that we're seeing is not what you're saying, but some people sort of very quickly equate it to a diluting of artistic integrity and the sort of concept of selling out. And I think that that's not quite accurate, because the economic landscape has changed in such a significant way that this is no longer selling out. This is trying to make next month's rent. Yes, exactly.
This is that's just smart.
Yeah.
Any way you look at it, it's smart. Yeah, I've never had a problem with a selling out thing. Because the thing is this, the length. How do I explain this? I mean, I've been in the industry for 45 years. Okay, that doesn't happen much. And granted, I'm not rich, but I've sustained. I've done okay. But the smart people like a Rihanna or like a lot of these people, you do say, this is how long I'm going to be here. This is it. So you're really smart to turn this into business ventures. That's not selling out. That's taking care of yourself and taking care of your family and taking care of your brand. So if you can brand it as something different, that's okay. They were an artist for a while. They did really well, and they made great music, and now they're a brand. Yeah, I have that. I've had that since the beginning of the thing. They're selling out. They're selling out. No, they're taking care of themselves. The smart people do it well, and the stupid people squander it and, and buy 15 Ferraris and then go bankrupt. So this is very smart, and I've, again, with that, I've never had a problem with that. I mean, I've been stupid enough to put money into my own records, but I've been smart enough to know that when the record comes out, hopefully I'll be able to listen to the songs and enjoy it. So, God, you're really cool, Dan. This is, you have no idea how much this is like invigorating.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Oh, absolutely. This is very cool. And I don't know if you expected this from me.
I didn't know what to expect. I have some prepared questions, but I know you're a really knowledgeable guy, and I'm really glad we're making this happen.
Oh, me too, man. So, and and in general, I think we agree, there's no agreement or disagreement. I just think that, like you do, artists should take care of themselves. Things have definitely changed, which, I have a lot of people my age who are just so about things, and I'm not. You have to move with the industry, and the industry is getting smaller and weirder, and and it's funny because I always go, everybody goes, oh, I'm glad there's no record companies, everybody says that, and I go, I don't know that, because one of the things that they did, again, not in pandemic time, but in real time, was, the labels would always bankroll you to be able to go and play for people, and that went away when the industry input went away. You could always say they're going to give me a tour bus and a crew, and we're going to go play arenas for $500 a night, opening for whoever, Disturbed or whatever it's going to be. And you were always able to make that connection. And that's another thing with the social media thing. There's nothing like walking onto an arena stage in front of 25,000 people. And even if they want to kill you, the energy and the ability to walk on a stage and say, you want to know what? I'm going to show them what I can do. There's nothing like that. I always say to people, the one thing I will always remember till the day I die is walking up those metal stairs, at some arena in the Midwest, and with the roadies holding the light on you, and you walk onto the top of that thing where all your gear is. And it's like better than sex, because you have the energy of all those people. And that's one of the things that, the YouTube stars won't have. Maybe some of them, but the percentage is so tiny, and that's one of the things. That's one of the reasons I wanted to be in music. I wanted that instant gratification. I wanted somebody to either give me the finger or say, or be cheering. And there's nothing that feels like that. I don't know how to explain it, but there is nothing in the world that can feel like that,
So when you said opening up, you actually didn't say opening up, but you said stepping onto an arena stage and people might want to kill you. I think the case you're making is you're opening up for the band they really came to see, and they're like, why are you wasting my time with this opening band?
What are you doing here? And many, 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 many times, at least in my experience,
win them over.
At the end of that show, they were cheering.
Yep.
Because you won them over, and they then felt what you felt by being on that stage. There's this one example I always give. I have signature guitar picks. And even back in the old days, in the 70s and stuff, if I was opening for Rush or somebody, I could hold my guitar pick up and look at a section of an arena, and that whole section would jump up and scream. And that power, that's like being a politician. It's like amazing to be able to do that. And, and I always feel sad. It's like I've played on actually probably about 70 plus albums. I'm friends with Steve Lukather from Toto from years back. A lot of us are still friends, and he's played on hundreds more than I have, but we all go, that's never going to happen anymore as a musician. You're just not going to play on records like. You're not going to play on that many records, on that many projects, that many downloads. You're only going to have a limited amount, and that's why a lot of us, even though we're not famous, I mean, I'm the most non-famous musician around. I still have a Wikipedia page, and people in England still call me the famous Bobby Messano, and that's sad. I mean, you're a musician. It seems sad to me that a lot of people will never be able to experience playing with different artists, playing big shows like that, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Because it's not palatable. It's not really it's not as realistic as it used to be. That's why I was saying if it comes down to nothing, and like the Greenwich Village folk scene and stuff, and it starts up like that with these cool singer-songwriters and, EDM people, doing stuff and things, and then bring it back up, they're going to experience that unbelievable feeling of playing for those 3 people or 50 or 500 or 1,000 and get it up to the Coachella and Bonnaroo lands. It would be so cool to see that happen because they'd all experience what we did, the old guys did growing up in the industry. That's more important to me than the money thing. It was always the note. If you can play a note that makes people cry, then you've done everything you could ever do in your life as a musician. So I talk too much.
No, you talk just right. So Bobby, is your wish for a YouTube star to go out and play live shows ultimately? Is that your wish for them?
Not only that, to become a true artist.
Okay.
I used to say, look, let's go to my, me being pigeonholed into blues right this second. Okay. When I started doing this, I went from playing, I grew up on blues. I grew up on B.B. King. I grew up on like all that old stuff and Eric Clapton and the Blues Breakers and, and all that English blues
John
stuff.
Mayall.
Okay. Yeah. So, when I made a conscious decision, which many of my friends, including Lynn Turner, said, hey, so you really want to go broke? I went back to something that I wanted to do because my heart felt good doing it, which was playing blues rock, contemporary blues. Okay. When I went back to doing it, when I was doing interviews and stuff, because at that point I was coming off all these big tours and, I was blah, blah, blah. And I was doing all these sessions. I was on some hit records and stuff. Everybody said, well, how do you like playing blues, being a blues artist? And I would go, no. And this genre, there's a couple of genres that I always thought were sort of sacred, but they're not anymore. Blues, real country, and jazz. I mean, true jazz. And I can't play jazz to save my life. And I have played country, but, it's all contemporary country. But so those 3 I always thought were sort of sacred. But people would go, how do you like being a blues artist? And I would go, I'm not a blues artist. I'm a guy that plays guitar, that plays good blues guitar, that came from playing music his whole life. I had already had a 14, 15-year career. And I'm playing other people's music, but I'm playing guitar on it, and I'm trying to find my way. So that was 31 years ago. Now I'm a blues artist because over the course of that time, I've written about my life. And to me, that's what makes you the artist, writing about your life, writing words that people can understand, writing words that, in one case in my life, save someone's life. So, that's the difference. The YouTube artist, to me, even if it's just an instrumental artist, because most of them are, most people, there aren't a lot of singer-songwriters that play guitar and stuff or whatever. I want them to be able to experience the whole thing, be able to go play for people, be able to express, even if it's a shredder guitar player, have them see the people's eyes and move that, And, unfortunately, the pandemic has messed a lot of that up. And I'm not saying none of them do it, but wouldn't that to me is the really true gift of being a musician. If I look what you said at the beginning of this, about seeing me play. And it probably wasn't one of my better shows, but it moved you, didn't it? Right. Think about that YouTube kid that's sitting there with a drum machine at the NAMM booth that has 28 million hits, being in a venue and watching people react to that. That's what the whole thing was always about to me. Does that make sense?
It does. And it sets up a very interesting situation where when you are isolated from those experiences, the priorities can easily be shifted in the sense that if I'm making a shred cover of a song for YouTube, I know it's going to be filmed. I know it's going to be there in perpetuity or until I take it down. Therefore, every note has to be perfect. Right. Whereas on a live show where I'm taking a guitar solo and I'm actually pushing up to the ceiling of what I'm physically and creatively able to do, I'm going to hit a dead string because my finger just didn't make it there in time, but that's okay because that's part of the process of growing.
Being live.
Right. It's a part of growing and it's a part of experiencing new things and finding new places and expanding that ceiling.
Absolutely. I leave mistakes on records because I want to be able to hear them later and say, God, that sucked. But man, I tried. I always talk about, I'm a big Jimi Hendrix fan and I saw Jimi Hendrix and that's how old I am. I'm like 8,000 years old. But the thing is I always talk about these people that copy Hendrix note for note. Not Stevie. I knew Stevie. We came from the same thread. We just played and we wanted to emulate but not copy. And I talk to these people that, like I'll do Hendrix. In fact, there's one on my Facebook page. It's actually, I was stunned at how good it was. It's like a 16-minute Hendrix medley.
Yeah, you have that on YouTube as well.
Yeah. So what happened was, what happens is people come to me and they go, wow, how could you do that? Either I get, oh my God, or what? How could you do that? Why didn't you play it like Jimmy did? And I'll go, and I know Eddie Kramer, who used to produce him, and I'll go, listen to all the outtakes, because the only time that will sound like that, and that's the same with every record and every download and every single thing that you listen to, period. It's only going to sound like that once, and that's the one time you're hearing it. That's it. It never sounded like that again, ever. It never sounded like that before or after. And that to me is what music's about. It's never the same. It's movable. It breathes. Sometimes it'll be angry. Sometimes it'll be loving. Sometimes it'll be falling flat on you. But the thing is that's what's so cool about it. It's always changeable. And that's what I always loved about the jazz guys, because they always change stuff, and it's the truth. It could never be the same.
I think there's 3 points to make on that. The first is that why don't you play it like Jimmy? Well, Jimmy already played it like Jimmy. So right. Why do we need someone else to play it like Jimmy? It's already been done.
And he only did it that one time.
Right, because one of the things Jimi Hendrix was known for was for bringing that improvisational quality into all his performances, so he would never play the same solo the same way 2 times, even if he's playing the same song. Right. The second point is that it can be a very valid and educational musical exercise to learn note for note how Jimmy played it, and to go into crazy levels of depth in terms of getting the phrasing, getting just the string choices, trying to get
the way we all learned.
Right. So that is a good exercise to do for people who are listening to this and who might be thinking, oh, so I shouldn't do that. No, you absolutely should go listen to whoever your favorite artist is. Go listen to them, learn it note for note, but not
listen
just the
to
notes.
Every inflection. Listen to the way they did it.
Yes, exactly. And I don't remember what my third point is, so we will keep it at 2.
What I was going to say, and that's what's cool about it, because we all learn by listening to what we love. And the thing is when you learn it note for note, which I did, I mean, I can still do the Eric Clapton solo of Crossroads note for note. And I learned that when I was 15. But the thing is then that's your building block into becoming you. And that's what's cool, again, about music, because it's always changing. You don't turn into a clone, you turn into yourself. And that's so cool about music, and again, I'm talking, the business stuff is something completely different, and totally understandable and very intelligent. But the music side of it, it's like a lot of my friends got into, music and then went pro. Most of them didn't go pro. But some of them did, and their whole reason was groupies, limousines, and helicopters and money. But then there were the other guys, like me, who wanted to do it to watch, the B.B. King thing where you hit one note and the whole audience bursts into tears, So, and if you combine the two of them, it's pretty cool. But, I mean, it's just, how do we get to that point in with everything that's going in? It doesn't matter if it's thrash metal or industrial or EDM or singer-songwriter or anything else. How do you get to that point where you've got, people that are doing it for the music for themselves and for their livelihood and moving people at the same time,
I think that's a very interesting idea. A couple episodes ago, I was talking with Alex Parchment, trumpet player, who just his second single he ever released went #1 Billboard Smooth Jazz. So we're
God bless him.
We're really happy for him. But
good.
One of the very interesting things about this single is he's never played it live. And so we were actually talking about how he's really excited. And the reason why he hasn't played it live was because of the pandemic. So he was talking about how he's really excited to actually take it out and actually play and actually see the reaction in the crowd. Right.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like I actually have I think you were saying 8. I think there's actually 9 or 10 albums that I have out. And I would say that I've only played like 30 or 40% of the songs in those albums. I only did them one time in the studio, and some of them I do have people, and again, I'm a tiny little minuscule artist, This is hard because it's opposite.
I don't know about that. I think in terms of modern blues, you're up there, Bobby.
No, but the thing is that I do have people see, and I also have this thing. I change my songs every single time I do them. My band never knows what I'm playing. I don't use a set list. I just go and play. I mean, and I have different bands. I don't even have a band right now, but I'll just start playing something and they have to catch up. It's almost like doing a jazz gig, and I have, I forget my lyrics all the time. I can't remember any of my lyrics, but I don't use a teleprompter. So I just, because most acts use teleprompters these days. And I'll sometimes have people come over and say, wow, those are interesting lyrics, And I'll say, God, you're the one fan that bought this. And the lyrics, It's like, you know Criss Duarte, guitar player, Texas guy, really great. He's another blues fusion rock kind of guy. He's like a Rhodes Scholar kind of person, and he's always reading and he gets bored to death with stuff. And one time he went up on stage and instead of doing his lyrics, he did like a chapter from some like famous novel from the 30s. And and because he was bored, So it was like, a classic novel he was reading, and he did the lyrics for it in his song. And I said, God, that's so friggin' cool, dude. He was like, oh, I don't know. I was reading the book, but again, that's music. That's real music when you're changing stuff that much,
One of the best pieces of live lyric advice I got from Michael Miller when I was probably about 12 or 14 years old. Michael Miller was the pottery teacher at my school, but he also played acoustic and sang. He said, listen, if you ever get to the second verse and you can't remember the words, just sing the first verse again.
First verse over again.
No one's going to know.
No one has any idea, And, and the big acts, it's really funny because if they forget the lyrics, they just hold the microphone up and have the audience sing it, But most of them are, using teleprompters or, their ears or, people are telling them in their ears, Mick, I can't get no satisfaction, So.
By the way, we love you, Mick Jagger. So much respect.
Yeah, I do too. I really do. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
But I do love him, it's amazing. But, this is the whole world of music is an enigma right now, and I'm going to tell you, from me to you, it's so cool to see what you're doing and your student stuff. We don't even know each other, but I'm proud of you.
Oh, thanks, Bobby. I really appreciate you saying that.
I've looked at all the stuff. It's really cool because one of the things we do have to do, and this is not just now, this has to do with music, the music industry, music manufacturing companies. If we don't keep, if we don't grow more people that like music and want to play it, it's going to be all computer and nothing because companies are going down because people aren't buying instruments. I mean, for years, venues have been dying because people don't go out. And that's what I was saying. It would be so cool to just see this thing go into the toilet and bring itself back up as a living, breathing, thing, a living, breathing industry of fans and music and people that love playing music and, yes, want to start their own clothing companies. But, it's just, I've been so sad, lately watching, and again, pre-pandemic too, watching what has happened to the thing that I love, because I love this. People say that when they go see me play or they see me in the studio, they go, you love this, don't you? And I'll go, yeah, I love this. I love playing that chord. I love hitting that note. I love singing that line. I love this, and it's, I'm sitting here, I'm almost crying. I was going to tell you this thing before about that. I always tell the story, but it's true. When I was going through my first divorce, I was writing for my first record, which was Dominion Roads, and then that turned into Holding Ground. I re-released it. That was in 98. Okay. I was on a label in Atlanta called Ichiban. And Ichiban was very cool. They had multi-tiered labels. They had a blues label. They had a pop label. They had Criss. Remember Criss? They had, it was just these two kids that, look up the video. It was like, it was dance, pop. They had a lot of different facets of the label. But I wrote this song when I was going through the divorce. It was called C. It was actually originally called, and this is this thing that I always say, be careful what you say to people because it can have an effect forever. But it was this song called Drowning in a Sea of Hope. And I thought that the words were so dire and dark that I just said, I can't do that, because if anybody ever hears this, what if this person is like in bad shape and takes my words, heeds my words. And, so I just changed it to Sea of Hope, and it was basically the song about trying to get through what I was going through. I wrote it for me, get through my life, get through this, what was happening, which has happened a lot of times. And it does in everybody's life. I'm not unique. I'm just like everybody else, you go through terrible divorces and people dying and stuff happening, and you get through it. But I wrote it for me, and I was doing like this little promotional tour before the record came out. Now we hadn't put the record out yet. And I was at a radio station, and this guy said, God, that sounds like an Eric Clapton song. And I went, oh. I said, well, I knew Eric because I had met Eric and with Steve Winwood, and, so, they said, you should get this to him. And I went, I guess, man, I don't know, maybe. And so I called a friend of mine, and they actually had somebody working on this Clapton album that he was doing in London. I think he was doing it in London. It was Pyramid, which I think came out in 98 or 99. And they called Eric, and they said, hey, could Bobby send this song to you? And he said, yeah, absolutely. Have him send it, So they sent it through. It was Disney Publishing in LA. So they sent the song out. He loved it. From what I understand, he demoed it, really dug the song. It's a really heartfelt song, and very Bob Dylan-y lyric oriented, like a lot of specific things to, to tying it in with classic novels and all sorts of stuff.
And
but anyway, he
acoustic
did put it
guitar.
on the record.
The sound is also acoustic guitar driven, and it's really a pop song at its heart, as opposed to a blues.
Right. It is. It's like there's that one line that says "A touch of kindness is on a library shelf," and I was literally talking about the book "A Touch of Kindness." And so anyway, it came out on Dominion, and then a couple of years later came out on Holding Ground. And the end of this long story is I got an email somewhere, probably, I think Holding Ground came out in 2003 or something. So maybe 2004, maybe even 2005, I don't know. But from some guy in Czechoslovakia. And they're always so polite over in Europe. He said, Mr. Messano, he said, I'm a big fan. He said, I got your record from my friend in France, and it's fantastic. And he said, but what I'm writing this email for is your song, Holding Ground. He said, I was in a bad way and I was going to commit suicide. And he said, and when I heard your song, Holding Ground, I thought you were talking to me, and you stopped me. And I want to thank you for saving my life. That's what music can do. That's something I could never have hoped to accomplish in this life. But I saved the guy's life because I wrote some lyrics down to save my life. So, the story still stuns me, but it's true. So
that's a really incredible story, and thank you for sharing that, Bobby.
You're welcome. I talk about that at my shows that I can't do. So it takes the breath away, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's really nothing to be said. It's a really amazing moment where the uplift of your own art that you are giving yourself, the therapy that you are giving yourself through your art, actually translated to someone else's life, and that's a really beautiful thing.
And that's the bottom line of that, is that's what I want for all of these young artists, to be able to experience something like that, and that's just little old me, I mean, I talked to my friend Al Greenwood last week. He was in Foreigner, and we did the Lynn Turner record. And I haven't talked to him in like 30 years. And we just had this beautiful hour-long conversation. And, he was going out and doing those Foreigner shows last year, going out on stage for the encores and stuff, and I played with Lou Gramm too, who was a singer, but he's not with them anymore, but they were just doing these shows. And he said, it's incredible to me to walk out on that stage after all this time. And, maybe people don't like Foreigner. Maybe they do like Foreigner. Somebody must like him. Every single show sold out. But he said, it's amazing to walk on that stage again after all this time, 50 years or 45 years, and watch every single person singing these lyrics. And I'm friends with Brian May from Queen, and I've gone to see the Queen tour over the last couple of years, and I went to the opening. He gave me a birthday present. I live in Colorado, and his birthday present was to go to Phoenix and see the opening night of the tour 3 years ago.
Nice.
Right. And, and I saw him backstage, and we hadn't seen each other in years, and it was just really nice. And he was really, because it was just supposed to be me and him and his assistant and my friend that came with me. And all these people started coming, and he was like, ugh. But I went and saw the show, and, it's 32,000 people sold out first night. And initially I didn't know it was the opening night. And he was like, tell me if it sucks. And I went, Brian, this is never going to suck. I'm sorry. But I watched these kids. I mean, Dan, I watched like 8-year-olds with their grandparents singing all of these Queen songs with Adam, who is, in my estimation, one of the best singers ever. And I was a huge Freddie Mercury fan. And I saw them a bunch of times, and I was stunned to watch that. There's 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds in a sold-out arena singing these songs from the 70s and 80s. That's the whole thing that we have to get back to, we need people that are artists now in 40 years to be singing those same songs for 100,000 people and having them sing the lyrics because they understand them and it makes them feel good. And they mean something. For God's sake, Lady Gaga named herself after Radio Gaga, so, it's, there's a lot of hope, but there's a lot of, I'm scared about stuff, I love music. So, and you do too.
Absolutely. And speaking of the music you love,
yes,
let's talk a little bit about the songs you never sang, the COVID Sessions, which is your new album, which is available on all streaming and download platforms.
Yes, it is.
So these are all songs that you either played on as a session musician, you helped write, or you have a strong emotional connection with.
Well, okay. First off, we'll take the helped write out.
Okay. So these are songs you either played on as a session musician or have a strong emotional connection with.
And then we'll take I played on as a session musician out. There's only one song in this entire thing that I had anything to do with.
Okay.
All the other ones are just tunes that I've always loved. And there's actually, this was going to be a double album, but I didn't do the other 10 songs. So they're all songs that they have an emotional connection for different reasons.
So which song did you contribute to?
There's a song called I Wish I Was Back in Your Arms Again. And I'll tell you the story about that, which is beautiful and sad at the same time. That song was on the very first record that I played on, which was, did you grow up in New Jersey?
New York, New Jersey, yeah, Rockland County,
okay.
Bergen County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there was a promoter way back when who's still actually sort of still around. His name was John Scher. He did all these shows in New York and New Jersey. He had a place called the Capitol Theater in Passaic, New Jersey, which is absolutely legendary. So he managed this band called Stanky Brown that I joined as my first professional band. And because John Scher was the manager, we were on the road with the Allman Brothers. I mean, we did a bunch of Boston stuff.
New Riders of the Purple Sage.
What was that?
New Riders of the Purple Sage.
Oh, yeah, New Riders. Yep. Everybody. We were on the road with everybody. And the first record was done by a guy named Charles Fisher. He was a producer. He was Australian. And do you remember Silver Sun pickups? that band from Australia that were really
No.
big for a little while. Yeah, he produced Silver Sun. He produced a bunch of other people. Anyway, Jeffrey wrote this song on that first album, and it was called "I Wish I Was Back in Your Arms Again." And I just loved the song for my entire life. You know, it's a dated old song, but the sentiment is beautiful. You know, and there's too many chords, and it's, you know, but it's just, I always wanted to do it. So when I decided to do this record, that song was going to be one of my picks. And I called the co-writer and a couple of the guys in the band, and I said, you know, I want to talk to Jeffrey. And Jeffrey was he was a rabbi in Dallas, Texas. So he called me up one day, and we talked for 2 hours. We hadn't talked, again, like in years and years and years. And I said, Jeff, I'm cutting this song because I just love it so much. And he went, oh, man, that is so cool. He said, great. I said, yeah. He died 2 weeks later. He never heard it.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
But I sent it to his daughter. I sent it to the co-writers in the band, and everybody went, God, this is such a fitting, beautiful tribute for Jeff, you know. But that's the only one I played on. You know, I did Dust in the Wind, and the reason I did that was because the very first tour with that same band was opening for Kansas on that tour. You know, and I've run into Kerry and I've run into Steve and a bunch of those guys over the years, and they were really so nice to me when on that first tour. They just were really sweet, and I always remembered that, you know. And then, the Springsteen song, I did The River, because I always loved that. And I went to every night at Brendan Byrne when they opened it, because my best friend in the world was his road manager, and I had tickets for every night. And I saw him do The River for the first time at Brendan Byrne, and I was on a bunch of those shows. And plus, I played with Clarence Clemmons, and I love Clarence, and like a lot of them mean something to me. I mean, Nature's Way by Spirit is a major classic rock song, but a lot of people don't, know it these days, So, it's just, they were all songs that meant something to me when I was doing it. Helplessly Hoping, I was a huge Crosby, Stills, Nash fan in high school. And the last time I did it was like the night that I graduated.
Yeah, and when you did it the night you graduated, I don't think there was 4 of you tracking over yourself to get all those harmonies.
No,
and
they
boy,
weren't.
did you nail the harmonies on that track, Bobby. That was
really?
something
You
else.
Think so?
Yes. I was listening to it. I was like, the vocal mix too sounds great. I loved it.
You.
Yeah,
and
really nice job mixing.
The two Clapton songs, I love Clapton, and the most thing I'm proud of, and actually, what's I'm really proud of, the George Harrison song, Isn't It a Pity? Because that song, that was Phil Spector, producing that.
Yes,
and I worked, me and Kenny and Kenny Landrum played keyboards on the whole thing, and Mel Watts played drums, and my friend Joe Escobar, who I went to grammar school with, who's a major scorer. He was a major scorer out in out in Vegas. He put all these horn sections together. I mean, I wanted it to sound as close as I could get to Phil Spector, even with the low voices and the horns and so, I mean, for me, and I did this in my bedroom, I mean, I did it in the bedroom and sent tracks out and had, the keys come back and had the drums come back. And, I know the sun is coming in on my face here. It's like, woo.
Is your, it actually looks kind of cool for right now, but what you could try doing is your camera on a laptop or something like that. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
There we go. Right.
Fixed.
Hello. Right.
There he is.
Move back this way. But yeah, I'm really proud of the record, because it's the first time I've done, I've been doing some sessions at home, but this is the first time, I was bored, and actually this was supposed to be like a kumbaya, me playing acoustic guitar on a bunch of stuff, and it turned into this. So I'm really happy about it. It's just songs that I've always loved that I never got to do. Literal. I mean, the title is literal, I mean, the songs I never sang. Well, I never sang them. So, you know, but I'm really pleased with it. I'm really happy with it.
So the songs I never sang, COVID Session, Bobby Messano's Messano. Sorry, I've been saying your name wrong this whole time. Thought it was Messano with a long A, but you've been saying it Messano.
You can do it either way.
Oh, we knew it either way? I'm gonna sleep easy tonight.
When I'm in Europe, they say Messano, and when I'm here, they say Messano. So,
well, I don't know what that says about me thinking it's Messano, but
well, no, it's because you're from New Jersey. So in New Jersey, they say Messano.
Every mistake I have ever made my entire life is explained by Bobby as, well, you are from New Jersey.
I try not to tell people that. That's one of the things when I went to London, and I lived in London for 6 months when I was with Winwood. I came back talking like this, and all my friends in New Jersey were like, what's the matter with you, man? I've taken up a lot of your time.
Oh, I'm okay to keep going if you're okay to keep going.
Oh, I'm good. I've got nothing to do. So.
Sweet. Let's keep on rock and rolling. So, as I mentioned in the intro, between 2012 and 2016, Bobby played over 400 shows in 32 states to 500,000 people. So, can you break down for us, Bobby, what's your typical day like when you're on the road?
Well, let's see. I do as many drugs as possible in the morning. No, I'm only kidding. I do no drugs. I hardly drink. I learned a long time ago that you have to sort of, if you're actually on the road, I had my couple of years of being a rock star and being crazy boy, but then you end up going and I digress, but I will go there. When I first went on the road, this is a funny story, but there was no bottled water. You did not get you didn't get Evian, you didn't get, any of the bottled water. There was no such thing as bottled water. So every town I would go in, I drink huge amounts of water, and I would get sick every single town I went to, because the bacteria in every single town was different. So I learned a long time ago to try to drink the right kind of water and to eat well and to sleep as much as possible, even though that wasn't always possible. But, get up in the morning, and sometimes if I'm at a good hotel, I go have breakfast. And, then if you're playing that day, you just sort of hang out, go to sound check,
Okay, but if you're not in a good hotel, what are you going to do for breakfast?
Go to Denny's.
Denny's. Okay. So either a hotel continental breakfast or find the local Denny's.
Right. Or if you're in Europe, the hotels always have amazing breakfast, and they have the best coffee. And I'm a coffee freak, so I drink coffee, and then basically if I'm in if I was on a real tour and let's go back, 2018. I did my first small headlining tour of Belgium and Holland, and I went over alone, But what I would do was, wherever I was going, I would try to. I mean, the cool thing about being on the road is that if you do it right and have fun with it, you can go sightsee. I love doing it. Find local restaurants that are, not your chain restaurants. And in Europe, that's easy because everything is local. So, but that's the thing I do the most. I'm not sitting there writing. A lot of times you're doing press, if it's depending on what it is. If you're on a tour bus, you're in your bunk, reading or watching TV or whatever you're doing, or doing internet stuff. But, your days are pretty boring, but you can make them fun by doing things that you wouldn't do if, what am I going to do? I'm going to walk around Colorado and see the things I've seen a million times. But if I'm in Milan, I'm going to go down to the fashion center and try to find myself a deal on a leather coat. So, that's what's fun about it. It's one of the most, I've lived my entire life on the road. I've been touring for 45 years. And, you can really enjoy it. I don't necessarily get homesick unless, Sometimes, when I'm married or in a relationship, you want to go home. But by the same token, it's sort of, it can be the most exhilarating experience of your life because it's what everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to be you. You want to wake up in a nice hotel. And that's the other thing. I'm a hotel snob. It has to be a good hotel. I don't care if I'm going broke paying for them myself. It has to be a really good hotel. So that's the one thing that I took from from sleeping in the early days in really bad hotels and having an apple for dinner, So, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's, and playing for a different audience every night is a lot of fun.
So let's talk a little bit about lifestyle. So we're actually going to sort of pivot into the second half of the podcast where we talk about lifestyle, practicing, creativity, things like that. But let's talk about it within the context of what you learned from being on tour, especially the lifestyle. So you talked about how important sleep was.
Yes.
So when you're on tour, how many hours of sleep do you try and get a night?
Well, that depends on if I'm, like when I was touring, which is what predominantly I've been doing since 1990, it's not as much because I'm a psycho driver. I drive like all the time. And one of the things about driving is that I love driving. I love driving, even when I'm home. I have a BMW and I have an SUV. And I've had 6 BMWs. I love driving. So if I'm driving, I can do 12, 14 hours at a clip. I've driven from Milwaukee to New York State to Warwick, New York, like in one shot. So if I'm driving, I don't get as much. If I'm on the road with someone else, I sleep on planes. I'm really good with that. I sleep in tour buses. I sleep when someone else is driving. And it really makes a huge difference because, sleep is probably the most important thing in your life. And most people, again, in the beginning, you go out and you're having such a good time and it's, you don't want to sleep, And like when I went to Europe with Steve Winwood, I didn't care about sleeping. I just wanted to see everything. And, plus, it was fun because we had friends on the road. Dire Straits was out and we'd go see them play and, we'd go do a bunch of stuff. So, but very, 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 very important to sleep. Very, 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 very important to not eat fast food, super important, even if it's not a salad every night, but eating the best food you can find is really important because you're going to make your way through the whole thing. Look, I'm a case in point, 100 years old.
So the message here is that if you're on the road and also in general, to maintain your level of performance and focus over the months that you're going to be out on the road, you need to sleep right and you need to eat whole foods whenever possible.
Absolutely. Like in the last 20 years, being able to literally go to a Whole Foods,
right,
and get nuts and things that are good for you to eat and have them with you, really important, because otherwise you do burn out, And again, in the beginning, it's different because you're like, wow, it's like crazy. I can't believe I'm doing this. And then eventually and a lot of people don't do it anymore. Or again, let's take the pandemic out of it. So a lot of people wean themselves off of it because they're just tired of doing it. But then there are the lifers that love it, that you enjoy it. You like being in a car or a bus or a plane and seeing a new place all the time. And the more you can take care of yourself, the better. And for me, Europe is always amazing because the food's incredible, the coffee's incredible. It's like, it's great. Sights are so different, You're not gonna be able to go to the Van Gogh Museum in Dubuque, Iowa. So even though I love Dubuque, so Dubuque is actually a really cool city.
Shout out to Dubuque, Iowa.
Yeah, baby.
So, have you ever tried any mindfulness or meditation to help increase or hone your performance or focus?
Like drugs?
No. So mindfulness and meditation would be like sitting quietly, feeling your body, feeling your breath.
Yeah, I'm usually quiet. I'm more quiet after shows. The drug thing, I was kidding.
Yes.
I'm a very nervous person anyway. So after shows, I'm very quiet. Before shows, it just depends on what's going on, because if it's a big show and you're excited, you're going to see people. People are going to be coming into the dressing room, or I'm just getting ready for the show itself. But no, I'm it's like I'm sort of on stun, like immediately. Like I used to do a lot of morning shows and stuff with radio, and when terrestrial radio was really happening, and a lot of times you're sitting in the studio at 5 o'clock in the morning with an acoustic guitar, and you have to sing. So I just sort of, like when I get up, once I have the first cup of coffee, I'm sort of ready to roll. And I know a lot of people that don't speak before they go on stage because they're saving their voice. I know a lot of people that do meditation. I mean, the only time I have really bad sinus problems, and that's the only thing I've ever had to do. I always have to have something for my sinuses, or a inhaler or something. But yeah, I'm a little odd when it comes to being the actual musician.
So you've never lost your voice due to overuse or misuse?
No, I've only lost my voice when I'm sick. And I had this really strange thing. And again, I've got terrible, terrible, terrible sinus problems. I was sick twice this year very badly. And they were all like, it wasn't COVID. It was all sinuses and postnasal drip. And I mean, I'm saying high fevers, sick for weeks, but that's the only time. But I had this weird thing. And this has happened, I would say, at least a dozen times in my life. Very strange. I can't talk, but I can sing. I'm like, but I can sing, and I can sing songs.
I had a music teacher when I was in like third grade tell us that it's easier on the voice to sing than it is to speak.
To speak, yes.
And I suppose that the caveat to that statement would be, if you're speaking with correct technique, or if you're singing with correct technique in terms of vocal placement, relaxation of muscle groups and things like that. But it seems to me like that's not something you've even had to think about. You just sort of are naturally singing in a good place.
Well, it's weird because when I sing, I sing all wrong. I don't necessarily sing from my chest, and I can still sing really high. Yeah. But I have a rough voice, but that's the way my voice has always been. But if you hear some of the Greenwood bootlegs, and in fact, there's a couple of new ones coming up this week that you should take a look at from this Italian show. He has an archivist that finds tapes, and this thing is spectacular. But I can mimic voices. I could sing exactly like Steve when I'm singing with Steve. I could sing exactly like Frankie Previtt when I was singing with Frankie Previtt. I could sing exactly like Lou Gramm when I was singing with Lou Gramm. And then my own voice is completely different, But I sing really wrong. I mean, people have seen me sing, and they're like, "Oh my God, how can you even have a voice after this time?" And I still sing, And it's funny. Please, Steve, if you see this, don't get mad at me. I mean, Steve is singing, and he's got one of the best voices that has ever existed in my estimation of life. He's singing a step and a half below me. I mean, if I do Can't Find My Way Home, it's still in D. Steve is singing it in B. And it's, I don't know how I can do it. But the voice, it's very strange, that whole thing of not being able to talk, but to sing. I mean, and I'm saying I have no voice. I'm sorry, I'm talking like this. And then I go and sing a song. Very, very odd. And again, I'm sure it has to do with the whole sinus, upper respiratory, this whole thing here, and so yeah, I'm a very strange musician because nothing that's supposed to work. I mean, things work for me that aren't supposed to work for anybody else because I do everything wrong. Even my playing is wrong to most people. when they watch me play. But anyway, continue with if we're talking about, technique and music and stuff like that. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I do want to clarify for listeners. So you were saying that you're still singing, sorry, what was the name of the song? It's his most famous song that he has.
Oh, Can't Find My Way
Yeah,
Home.
Can't Find My
Blind Faith song, yeah.
Yeah. So originally recorded in D.
Yes.
But what is natural is over the course of time, over the course of a human being's life, that those higher notes start to go away, especially, and whether this is natural or not, I think is up for debate, but especially with rock stars and pop stars who are using higher registers in their voice, even though they might naturally be a baritone, but they're singing up in that sort of high tenor
range,
pop area. That I think Roger Daltrey would be one example, that some of those higher notes aren't quite there. I think even David Bowie, the last time he performed Space Oddity live, he was singing the lower harmony on the For Here I'm Sitting in a Tin Can part, and he had one of the background singers singing the high part. So this is a natural, this is an expected outcome for especially male rock stars and pop stars as they move on to later stages in their career, that number one, either they're going to change the part that they're going to sing so they can sing lower notes, or two, like you were saying, they'll actually bring the key of the song down, in this case a minor third or a step and a half, down from D to B, which means the highest note you have to sing is lower than it used to be. So it sits in a naturally stronger place. But for listeners, there's nothing wrong with this.
Not at all.
This is absolutely what singers should always do, which is sing in a key that fits the voice and makes your voice sound the best. You do not want to be straining your voice. Right, you don't want to strain the voice.
Yeah, but for some reason or other, I can still do it. Maybe it's not as strong as it was, but, like even doing like the high background vocals on My Father's Eyes and stuff, my falsetto is still really high, and it's, but I'm an odd musician because, again, I'm not a trained musician. I had someone that said to me after I had done, 2 years ago, that said, I'm going to show you how to sing. And I went, I think I'm all right for now.
I've made it this far.
Yeah, I think I'm okay. I could do it. It's the same with playing. When I was giving lessons, believe this or not, I would tell my students, and I'll explain this after you. You're going to hate it, though. I would say, you don't have to practice that much. You don't have to practice this that much. Practice it when you feel like it. And I'll tell you why. I say that. I'm 66, right? I have no carpal tunnel. I have no arthritis. I have no problems with my hands, knock on wood, except I hurt my arm a couple of weeks ago helping somebody move. But one of the things I realized over the years, especially after first starting to play, is that all of my friends that were constantly practicing, never stopped. I knew Eddie Van Halen. If you saw Eddie walking down a hallway with his bodyguard, he had a guitar on and he was playing. Every one of them had carpal or arthritis problems.
Or tendonitis.
Yes, always. And I attributed me not practicing so much. I'll go, if I have nothing to do, I'll go 3-4 months without picking up a guitar. Doesn't bother me. And then I'll pick it up and I know exactly what I used to do before it. There's no change.
Okay, well, two questions on that, Bobby.
Yeah.
Number one, did you ever have a period in your life?
Yes.
Where you were, okay. So that seems to be pretty universal across the board, that everyone, for a lot of us who went to college for music, it happens in college. For folks who don't go to college, maybe it happens early in the career, where you're spending large numbers of hours practicing to develop the facility, to develop the relationship with the instrument.
Absolutely.
So the second point is, when you were saying to your students, you don't need to practice it that much, what does practicing it that much mean? Do you mean 15 minutes,
I'm not
20
saying
minutes?
I would say, what I would try to do was I would say, when you want to do it because you feel it, then practice. So if you do feel like practicing 20 times a day doing the same thing or whatever we're working on, then do it. But don't do it to the point, because you know how it is, especially with beginner students, their hands hurt.
Yeah.
We're asking them to do things that are really bad. We're asking
unnatural.
them to bend their fingers and put them on metal, that pieces of the metal will go, but at the end you got, you don't have any fingerprints anymore, so the FBI can't find you. and you're asking them to, it's not like a piano where it's very, it's a beautiful thing to play piano because the way your hands are on the keys, but on a guitar, you're asking them to like twist their arm around and put the fingers on the string and then press it down. I mean, when I was learning how to play, I used to put duct tape on a book, because my hands are so small, so I could press the strings down, So, yeah, I mean, I know it's not don't practice. It's like practice and learn it. And if you really want to do it and you're really having fun doing it, well, go to hell, go crazy, go nuts. But at a certain point, I did learn, especially after being a pro, and doing a show every day or 2 shows and everything else, I would go, I don't want to pick this guitar up because I know what I'm doing. I know where I want to be. I don't necessarily want to learn anything else at this point because I'm comfortable with me. And then I stopped, and it really has helped because I can play bass without a problem. The only problem I have a little bit is with a 12 string. And, and then when I pick it up, it's like, you're putting a piece of your body back on and it just feels normal and comfortable, but without the aches and pains. So
I think to clarify for less experienced musicians or people who are thinking about starting guitar who are listening to this, it's if you are partnering up with a coach or a teacher and they tell you, okay, I want you to practice this for 15 minutes, 4 days a week. Follow their instructions, practicing 15 minutes, 4 days a week. But chances are you're going to start having so much fun, you're going to go way over those 15 minutes. Yes. Right. Right.
And it's like the, it's like the ear training stuff. I'm a big ear. I could listen to a song and play it back to you as soon as it's over.
Right.
And I taught at School of Rock in Bergen County in the South Hackensack one for like 4 or 5 years. And I don't read. I can't read a note of music. I can write chord charts. I can see what's going on, but my ears are so good that I could literally listen to a song and play it back. Even the sounds of the record. I could get you the same sounds. And I have the story that I had this kid at School of Rock who was one of my students, and he was so good, just really great. And he would walk in one week and say, hey, I'm listening to Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow. And he'd say, listen to what I learned. And he put the amp on, and it was just a line 6 with his Strat or whatever he had, and sound just like Jeff Beck. And then he'd come in and say, I listened to, it was, I'm trying to, some new band that he had heard, and turn the amp on, get the sound, get the Strat, play it exactly like it. And then he'd go, hey, I'm listening to Allman Brothers live at the Fillmore East. And he'd come in and he'd sound just like Dickie Betts and everything. His ears were so good. I said, oh my God. I said, you're like me when I was a kid. And one day his parents came in, and I used to, when I would teach, and I'm a bad teacher. I'm a really bad teacher, but I got 3 kids into Berkeley. But I would teach so that they would do things that they wanted to do, that they loved, and bands that they liked. Because I would always say the whole goal is that they would want to play with other kids and make music together, doing the stuff they liked, not stuff that the teacher's teaching them. So Puff the Magic Dragon, as much as I love the song, is not exactly what I wanted to teach them. I wanted to teach them what they were listening to, or what they liked. If they liked AC/DC, well, let's learn an Angus solo, And some of these kids were just spectacular. But one day his parents came in, and they were divorced, and you could just see the animosity. Man, these people, they hated each other's guts, and they were standing there, and they said, we want to talk to Bobby alone. And I said, what? No problem. And they said, why are you not teaching him music? Why are you not teaching him notes? And I went, well, I said, because I don't know them. I said, I can tell you what the notes are, but I can't tell you on a piece of paper what they are. Then what's the use of this? I said, well, your son's ears are the best I've ever heard. And I said, and this kid loves playing. And I said, and if you want him to go to a teacher that will teach him the notes, I would say, fine. I said, but are your plans for him to play music with other people and enjoy it and grow like that? Or do you want him to go to Juilliard and be a symphonic composer? Or do you want him to do you think he'll be teaching music in 15 years or 10 years? And then I looked at them and I said, what was your favorite band when you were married? And they got all googie and they both went Grateful Dead. And I went, how many shows did you go to? I said, and the husband said, 73. And she went, no, we didn't. We went to 87. And they were like, and I said, did you ever see Jerry with a music stand? I said, did you ever see Kreutzmann with a music stand up there playing drums or Phil Lesh? Was he like flipping pages over? And they went, no. And I went, that's because they were playing music and they were playing music with their friends and they knew what they were doing because they could hear it and they knew what they were playing. And yes, some of them could read and some of them couldn't read. But the whole thing is that your son is gifted with ears that most people don't have. And you want to know something? I had one of my guitar companies made him. He was a lefty. They made him a custom-made guitar that he wanted. And you want to know where he ended up? He ended up going to the guy next door to me, learning music because he did want to learn. He learned how to read music. He went to me to learn performance stuff so he could go play with his friends. And then he went to Berkeley.
There you go. I think having those conversations with parents is so critically important, not only to understand families' expectations, but then to also educate the whole team, the whole system.
Absolutely.
To disseminate that information that, okay, yeah, we're going to be teaching Johnny, whoever Johnny is, we're going to be teaching Johnny how to read, but we're only going to be spending 10 minutes of the lesson on that. The other 20 minutes of the lesson, we're going to be spending time on what Johnny wants to play because which would you prefer? Would you prefer that you're going to have to fight to force Johnny to practice every single day and it's going to become this contentious point and he's going to never play it again as soon as you give up the fight? Or do you want it to be this thing where you're going to deepen your child's relationship to music? You're going to give them this window into this amazing artistic world where they can express themselves.
And they can't wait to pick up that instrument.
Exactly. Right. And then a little bit at the end, you sprinkle, it's like dessert and dinner. So maybe we read for 10 minutes and the promise is, listen, you read for 10 minutes and then we're going to play whatever you want.
Yeah. Here's your Deezer song or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, and most, a lot of the people that I've spoken to, like Ellen Foley, who's an amazing singer that was on the first Meatloaf album. She was teaching at the New York City, one of the New York City School of Rock. So we talked about it too, because she can't really read and she doesn't know, but she did Paradise by the Dashboard Light. My God, but that's what a lot of, I would speak to a bunch of teachers who, one, they were only there. You're so different. Like I said, I'm so impressed with everything I've seen with you, but they're there to make money. They're, and the quicker they can get the kid out of there, the better. And my goal was, I want you to come in here. And we used to have these ensembles, right? Where we do, the last one I did before I was fired by School of Rock, because at that point, Sylvan Learning Centers had bought it from from Paul Green. And they were making them School of Rock stores, and they were cutting the measly salaries out, and they didn't want kids. The last ensemble I was working on was a Queen ensemble. And it was so cool. And we did it. They had the one I was at had a big venue in the back, which was like a 500-seat venue. That, red jumpsuit apparatus would come through, and Paramore and all these bands would play there. But we used to do the ensemble there, and then we go to Mexicali in Teaneck, and do a second one there. And I would mix it like a big stadium show. I would do front of house, with big lights and big sound, and the parents were always freaking out. And this last ensemble I was setting up, they had the singer part of School of Rock, and I had all the singers, and they were going to do all the background vocals. I had a guitar orchestra set up with 6 guitar players playing all the Brian May guitar parts, then 2 lead guitar players, 2 rhythm guitar players, drums, and it was just going to be putting the entire thing together with 20 kids playing the parts and having all those same Brian May parts and everything. And then it just went out the window because, of what happened. I said, I can't deal with this. But it was so cool because they would be up on that stage doing AC/DC. We did a Foo Fighters. Them Crooked Vultures, and Nirvana, and one other, like it's a whole Seattle show. And oh my God, it was unbelievably cool. And they were like so excited because even if they got to play 2 songs in the whole thing, it was like the best thing that ever happened to them. And then some of them went on and they have bands and they're doing things now, and but that's the whole purpose. The whole purpose is to make you love this. There's this line in Almost Famous about, something like, we're not groupies, we love the songs. We love that, and that's what it is. It's loving what you're doing. And when you put them in on a stage with big sound and lights, and they're playing that stuff with the smiles on their faces, and maybe it's not perfect, but it's really pretty cool. They walk off going, and all the parents would come up to me going, oh my God, that's the best thing I've ever seen. My son's so happy, So, that's why we would do that. But lots of teachers don't get it.
Absolutely. Well, it's really awesome to hear that you're bringing your artistry and you're teaching the stagecraft in addition to the notes, because I think it's always really important to have that conversation as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
One quick guitar nerd moment.
Yep.
My favorite Mexicali show that I saw was Alan Holdsworth.
Yes. Amazing guitar player, right? Yeah.
No words.
No, brilliant.
No words.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant player. Can't say anything else about that. So.
No, other than everyone, when you're done listening to this podcast and you've checked out Bobby Messano's discography, go listen to Alan Holdsworth. So Speaking of practice, do you have a time or times of day that if you're going to practice, you prefer to practice?
No, absolutely not. No set anything.
Okay. And if you're going to practice, how many hours a day would you practice?
Not that long. The thing that I've learned over my years is that my practice comes when I'm writing songs. So, and when I'm writing songs, I write very strangely, like everything else I do that's strange. I mean, if you look at me playing, I hardly ever use my pinky, and everybody would go, God, you play all wrong.
No, go, Sean Lane. Didn't use his pinky. You want to know when I use my pinky? I use my pinky when I'm doing funk music. To get the 13.
To get to get the 13, to hit a 9 and
sharp
add the
9.
2. I'm a big, huge, major funk music fan. Earth, Wind and Fire is like my friggin' favorite band. So that stuff. Listen to the Nile Rodgers stuff. Like that, adding 7s and 6s and stuff. That's what I love. But I don't do it right. No, when I'm writing songs, and the other interesting thing is I never write songs on electric guitar. I always write them on acoustic. Even if they turn into the most heavy electric guitar song, they all get written on acoustic. And I'm not sure why. I just do that. By the way, have you listened to Lemonade, that album?
Yes.
Okay. That song, did you listen to that instrumental called Junk Jam?
Yes.
Okay. We wrote that in the studio in 15 minutes. That was because, Bob Malone is totally ridiculous. So all the guys on that session, oh, God. And Carl Dufresne, who's the bass player, brilliant player. He was the North Mississippi All-Stars, and Tab Benoit. And he died 4 months ago. And everybody's still just broken up about it. But we wrote that song in the studio based on a Neville Brothers song, because we were in Louisiana when we were doing it, based on a Neville Brothers song that I don't think they ever released. It's only on live albums. And, that's like the epitome of musicians putting something together when they have no idea what they're doing. And that's what I was going to say. And so, when I write and when I'm, getting ready to do, even when I'm, like if I'm getting ready to do a session, I'm the weirdest musician ever. Like if I'm getting ready to do a session or a show with someone, especially now, I don't even work on it until the day before, because I want it to be really fresh and know it.
And
when
fun. Is the reason why you want it to be fresh so that it's exciting in the moment when you play it, and you sort of, you've not been over it so many times that it's old hat. It's fresh, it's fun, it's exciting, and then you can bring that energy and that enthusiasm to the performance.
Absolutely. And that's the way I do records too. I mean, every one of those records that you heard, the most it's taken to record them was 2 days. And the longest it's ever taken for me to do one of my records, from sounds to mastering, is 5 days.
Wow.
Because I grew up in studios. I grew up, I did sessions with Roy Thomas Baker, who you might know his name. He did all the Queen albums and all the Cars albums. And it was tedious and sleepy and, drinking too much coffee and there for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And, and I got to the point where I said, when I was doing my records, except for the Messano record, which is the, old school rock and roll from the 80s record, everything else is pretty quick, because I go in, I set up for a round of guitars. I have my acoustics, my dobros, my electrics, my whatever, and I have a mic, and I do this vocal, then I do the guitars, I do each of the guitars, and then I move on to the next song. And I'm also one of those people that almost every one of those guitar solos on every one of those songs you heard was the first take. The only time I want to change it.
And you said you weren't a guitar hero, Bobby Messano. Come on now.
The only time I will change that is when I'm creating something. Like if I'm creating a 2 or 3 part guitar solo, then I'll work on it to make it that. But all those other solos, it's like one take. Here we go. Okay, good. That's it. Well, you got that note. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. I like it. So it's really, I'm a very strange, well, you want to know why too? Because that also came from the live music thing for all these years, because if you're on stage, I do a lot of acoustic shows, and I've especially done more in the last, 2-3 years. And I sit down in a chair, and my shows are not like, 60-minute. I can't do sets. I can't do like a 45-minute set and take a break and a 40-minute. I do 2 to 3 hour shows. I can't do anything but that, or an hour and a half. And it has to be a concert to me. Otherwise, the flow doesn't work. It just doesn't feel right, because all these musicians, and it, they want to do 40 on, 20 off, 40 on, 20 off. I want to do 2-3 hours and then be done, sign autographs, and leave. But I I sit there on my stool with I usually have 2 or 3 acoustic guitars, and I will say, it's never going to be more real than this, because it's me with a guitar and a little piece of skin in my throat, and that's it. So it suck. It's really going to suck. If I'm going to forget something, I'm going to forget it. If I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to make it. But it's never going to be any more real than this, because this is what it really comes down to. It comes down to the guitar, for me, the guitar and the voice and the song. And that has always been really important.
So changing gears a little bit, when we look at songwriting, do you take any steps to stay creative, or are you, because you've lived in this sort of music world your whole life, it's like you're just taking time to write and that's going to be what it is?
I think that's what it is. Yeah, I'm a really lazy writer. The only time I write, I mean, okay, let's take Lemonade. Lemonade was the last record, right? That was actually supposed to be a record that I was producing for someone else. Okay. There were 2 songs and the musicians had all the songs from the other artist. The other artist didn't show up or knew that she wasn't going to show up. And I was on the road doing acoustic shows in Florida, and then flying to New Orleans, and then driving out to Dockside Studios to do the record. And when I got wind and everything had been paid for, and the musicians were, $1,000 a day, and they were flying in from LA and coming in from, New Orleans, and I was coming in from Florida. So before, I had been getting wind that this was not going to happen, and I couldn't cancel it. So what my co-producer and I, we were co-producing this artist. What we decided to do was I'll write a record. And I wrote the entire record other than Junk Jam and what did we do? Find a Cost of Freedom. And I rewrote the Bad Guys, and I rewrote Heal Me. But all the other songs I wrote the 24 hours before we went into the studio.
So you were supposed to do a session for a different artist. The other artist is not going to show, so you take the musicians, you take the time, and when life gives you lemon, you make lemonade. And so the album is called Lemonade.
Yes. I literally walked into the studio. I was flying in on Southwest to New Orleans and I was going, God, maybe my plane will crash because I don't know what I have here. I was like, I don't know what these songs are. I don't know what this is. I'm not sure. I really wasn't. And I landed. I got my rental car. I remember it was, I don't know if have you been to New Orleans?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So it was that, that rain that's like that warm rain that they get in New Orleans, and it's got all the humidity.
Yes.
And it was that rain, and I'm driving my SUV to the studio, just going, I don't know what this is going to be. I really don't, And I got to the studio, and I walked in, and the guys looked at me and went, "We're not doing her record. We just heard." And I went, and they went, "Wow." They said, "What do you have?" And I went, "Here you go." And I picked my phone up, and I played Black and White over the microphone into the headphones. And 15 minutes later, the song was done.
There you go.
And then we went from there. Because I was still, you could see I've got my notes still everywhere. I was writing lyrics as I was singing them. I was like, it was just, but that's one of my proudest moments, that record, because I wrote an amazing record. I did the same thing with Love and Money. I wrote Love and Money in 2 days. Bad Movie was different because I tend, as you said before, I tend to have all these. Well, I'm not the only one, so I'm not unique. But I tend to have women problems, and like many of us do, relationship problems. And Bad Movie, I won't get political, but it was during the 2016 election, and I had just gone through the worst. What I thought was one of the worst things I had ever gone through, which tends to be another worst thing that happens, and it's okay. It makes for great music. And and my friend John Tiven, who's this magical writer, he's written for everybody. I mean, Cheap Trick and B.B. King, and he wrote People Who Died for Jim Carroll. I mean, this guy is like an amazing writer. Had been wanting to write with me, and he kept calling me up, and he kept saying, okay, we got to do this record with you. And I was like, no, I'm going to go jump off a bridge. And he was like, no, you're not. We're going to write the record. I was like, no, we're going to. He started sending me these lyrics that were just so funny. And it was about me. And then he called Brian up and said, Bobby's going through some bad times. So Brian wrote Come to Your Senses. And Larry Weiss, who wrote Rhinestone Cowboy and Bend Me, Shape Me, started writing lyrics about what I was going through, and I put together this team of writers, and we wrote this. That's why there's 15 songs on it. There was even more than that. And we just started writing these lyrics, and I'm telling you, I was laughing so hard at some of these lyrics. I said, okay, I'm going to do the record. I have the money in the bank. Let's do the record, because this can't not happen. I mean, if the phone ain't ringing, it's me not calling. I mean, my God, where do you come up with lyrics like this, So that was like the funniest and most, that was a really true to life record,
Yeah,
it's half about the election.
And it ended up doing really well, too. It debuted at number 1 on SiriusXM Bluesville channel.
Yep, yeah, it did well. I mean, it was great. But it's a really, if you really dig deep into it, it's so funny. Some of these lyrics are just so incredibly funny, and my favorite song on the record is Why Water a Dead Rose, which, I mean, John called me up. He had gone to LA to stay, and he was getting on a plane to fly back to New York, and I was in Florida. I was living in Sarasota, and because I was going back and forth from Nashville to Sarasota for like a couple of years, and I've lived in Florida a lot, and he sent me these lyrics on my phone, and I saw it, and I started crying. And I went, oh, my God. And I walked outside, and it was Florida, humid, November, sat on a bench and wrote the song in like about 6 minutes. And it's that very Jimi Hendrix sounding, and it's one of my all-time favorite songs. And a pop kid from Canada actually covered it like last year. He did a really cool job with it. It was like a Nashville poppy kind of, it's like 17 years old, and they called me up, and the publisher called me. His guy called me up, and they did, they cleared the song, and it was like really neat. I think it's on iTunes, but he did a really cool little version of it. Very poppy, very drum machine, and good job, because he heard it on Bluesville in his mother's car one day. And I was like, oh, that's so cool, And he wouldn't talk to me because he was like afraid. And I was like, what are you afraid of? He was like, oh, I don't know. You got records out. And I was like, oh, stop, So it was cool. But yeah, so it depends on what I do. I usually write. I have this thing where very rarely do I come up with music first. It's very, very, very rare. Like Bodentown, which is an instrumental on Love and Money, had gone through a couple of revisions. It had actually been done for a TV show. They didn't take it, and then it ended up as a samba on Love and Money as an instrumental. So, and that was at the last minute that I changed it up to a samba. But most of the time, I have like I have papers everywhere and notebooks, and I write in my car. I'll just write lines down, and I'll write down what happened or something that's, you know. I mean, I found one the other day from when I was in Florida, and I was going to a show at this sort of dive blues bar that's sort of famous. And I was riding down the road, and I looked to my left, and I went, "Wow!" And I wrote down "cows under a power line," because there were all these cows under an electrical grid, and I thought it was the funniest thing I had ever seen. So I wrote this down. I was like, I've never used the lyric, but it was like, oh my God. So a lot of times I'll write lyrics down, I'll write lines down. And then when I'm forced to write a record, which is what it comes down to, I'm forced to write. And then when I force myself to write the record, I find all of my lines and all of my notes and all of my titles and everything else. And then I'll sit down and try to think of what I would think, because none of my sound, very rarely, except for my shuffles, do any of my songs ever sound the same. They're all different. I'm really proud of that. The same with all of my guitar solos. You can match 800 guitar solos out there on records, and none of them sound the same. So I've always been proud of that, about making it a singular song by itself, a singular solo, a singular vocal, a singular lyric, even though there are bits and pieces. So what I'll do is, when I start writing, I'll sit down and I'll find the lyrics, and then I'll try to find some vibe that I think will fit with it and a key that I can sing. And then I'll just start plugging in lines that I think that work with what the lyric is supposed to be based on the title. And, and that's how I end up writing. I mean, it's funny because on the Messano record, I needed one more song, and I was really bored. And I started taking all of these like records I had played on and artists, and this is 1989, all these artists I had played with, all these tours I had done, all these records I had played on, and I just put a bunch of lines together and fit all these things in, just saying, I got a song. So what ended up with that song is, a fan of mine in England deciphered everything and sent me a thing. This is Lynn Turner. This is Fiona. This is, Lou Graham. This was, and I was like, oh my God. And what ended up happening was my friend Dave Natal, who was mixing front of house for Van Halen, said, hey, I want to mix one of your songs. So he came to the studio and mixed it. And then maybe the next year, I get this call, and I answered the phone. I said, hello. He said, hey, Bobby. And I went, yeah. He goes, it's Danny Elfman. I went, excuse me? He goes, hey, man, it's Danny Elfman. I'm out here in L.A. on a soundstage. And I'm like, okay. I said, I'm a big fan of yours, man, and I loved Oingo Boingo, and I love all your soundtrack stuff. He goes, I got this song. He said, I'm putting it into this movie. And he said, it's really cool. It's Hot and Heavy, it's called. I went, oh. I said, yeah, we're putting in a stripper scene. I said, of course, whatever it was. And he goes, I think it's great. And I went, well, man, like coming from you, that's amazing. And he said, how long a queue do you want? Because, the longer the queue, the more money you make. And I said, I don't know. Okay, do 25 seconds? He went, yeah, sure, I'll give you 30. So he put this queue in, and this song that I wrote because I was bored, just taking all of these things that I had done in my life that somebody had deciphered, that Van Halen's front of house guy mixed, went into this movie with John Lithgow, and it was like, okay, so, it's, but I will say, this is one of the things I'll say to whoever's going to see this. If you can write music and you can write songs, especially good songs, that's where you will truly make your money. If you can place them, because that's where the real money is.
The sync
licensing. It's not like it used to be. I mean, in fact, it's pretty now. But, I had a song up there was a Kevin Costner movie in 1998 or 1999 called For Love of the Game with Kelly Preston. Really great movie. And I had a song up against Clapton and Sheryl Crow, I think. And it didn't go in the movie. And actually, it's funny because I saw the movie last week. I watched it again. And Garth Brooks, as his alternative artist, Criss, whatever it was, ended up getting the song. So he ended up, but that, back then it used to be really good money. It used to be, $150,000, $100,000 for a single license, $250. Now they're down to maybe 15, 20, 30. Sometimes you can get 50, but that's still a nice chunk of money to get something in a commercial or to get something in a movie. So if you write really good songs, even if it's just singer-songwriter stuff, that's your money. That's where you get it,
So guys, you heard it here. Bobby says to number 1, go out and perform live. See the look in people's eyes.
Yes.
He says number 2, to write from the heart. And he says number 3, try to get in with a sync deal. Bobby Messano, his new album, The Songs I Never Sang, is available now on all streaming services, apps, and platforms. His website, BobbyMessano.com. Facebook, Bobby.Messano.fan page. His Twitter, @BobbyMessano. Bobby, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, man, this was so much fun, so enlightening, and just great. And you, Dan, you are absolutely fantastic. You're a fantastic music person. And best of luck with everything. And I hope we can do this again. And I'm so impressed with everything you do. And I hope my answers weren't too old school, because I still don't think I'm that old school. So,
On the money. Ladies and gentlemen, Bobby Messano.